I'm a girl, and this happened when I was 20 in the early 2000s. People used landlines, and cell phones were not unlimited. This happened in a town about an hour away from Sacramento. My friend was house sitting for a family that her family was friends with from church. She was to house sit in the country just outside of town for a week. They had animals like cats, rabbits, a donkey, and a horse. The family also had dogs, but the family took the dogs with them. My friend was in charge of feeding the animals and watching the place. She didn't have to get the mail daily because they had this metal lockbox style mailbox down their long driveway. They didn't have any neighbors for miles, just fields of alfalfa, cattle, and corn, so I guess the lockbox was for safety? Towards the end of the week, she asked if I wanted to spend the night and keep her company, and I thought it sounded fun. I had moved out of my aunts and uncles and gotten my own apartment, so I told her I'd pick her up on the way there after I got out of work. We got there around 9:30 p.m., grabbing dinner on the way. We went into the barn first thing and fed the animals. It was late for their dinner, and they made their hunger known with their animal noises. We made sure they had water, then went inside. The house was this big ranch-style house, single-story. The living room was to the left as you walked into the home. There was a long hallway directly to the right of the entrance that led to where the bathroom and bedrooms were. Straight ahead was a dining area, and to the left of that was the kitchen entrance and a patio door. They did not have an open floor plan. In the kitchen, on the opposite side, was also a long hall that had several doors. My friend explained that the wife ran a daycare center out of the house. These rooms were play areas for the kids she took care of. We didn't bother going over there because we had no interest. We watched some TV, ate our leftovers, and talked about people we knew. As it got later, she turned on the house alarm and said she didn't like sleeping in other people's beds, so she had been sleeping on the couch, then offered it to me. She would sleep on one of the two huge recliners that reclined so far back it was almost flat. The chairs were really comfortable, so I said I'd take the chair. I went and laid back in a chair with my blanket. We turned off the TV and were talking for maybe 20 minutes in the dark when the motion sensor floodlights started shining through the window, lighting up the room. Now, I really have no idea why people in the country think it's okay not to have curtains or blinds, because to me, that's insane. We both got quiet, and Amanda says,
Maybe it was one of the cats?
Then we started hearing gravel crunch, like a person walking across gravel in the parking area outside. My chair was closest to the window, and I slid carefully down to the floor, clutching the stupid blanket the whole time. The floodlight timed out, and my friend slid to the floor too. We laid on our stomachs in the dark, not knowing what to do for a minute, when we heard a loud bang, and all of a sudden, the house alarm started blaring, and the floodlights turned on again. It was so loud we covered our ears, and I started to panic. I swear I have never been so close to peeing my pants in my life. I began crawling towards the keypad for the security, because I've seen the commercials. There's a button you push and a person responds to you in case of an emergency, or at least sends the police. The main screen says, Patio 1 of 2 open. Amanda starts to cry a little and hits the call assistance button on the pad, and nothing happens. There's no assistance. I ask where her phone is, and she says there's a phone in the kitchen and one in the parents' room down the hall. So our choices are to go to the kitchen, past the windows, and next to one of the patio doors, or to go down the hall to the parents' room and use the phone there. I asked her where the patio is, and she said it was in the daycare part of the house. It was an easy decision. We go inside the parents' room, and it's pitch black. I ask her where's the phone, and she says,
I think we have to turn on the light.
I really don't want to turn on a light, but have no choice. I don't have a flashlight and didn't bring my cell phone because I had limited minutes. It was a simpler time, and Amanda didn't even get her own cell until after this happened. She turns on the light, and we start looking around the room. Not only did these people not have curtains on any window, but they didn't even have closet doors. We see a golf club leaning against the wall by the bed. They probably have it instead of a baseball bat, which is what I had next to my bed at home. We figure if we hit someone with it, it's gonna leave a mark. She grabs it and we continue our search for the phone. Looking at the obvious places, we find a cordless phone stand, minus the actual phone. The alarm is still raging. We have a light on, and the person who opened the patio door is bound to notice is all I'm thinking at this point. She asks,
Should we use the locate phone buttons?
I look at her and respond,
Yeah, if you want some strange guy coming in here with it and asking us if we were looking for something.
I am getting mad that I'm scared and in this situation. Standing there knowing that we have to go to the kitchen, the house alarm stops. It gets country quiet. If you lived in the country, you know what I'm talking about. There isn't another golf club for me to grab, so I make her go out first, flipping every light on and keeping the doors we passed in the hall closed. We double check the security panel, and it still says the patio is open. Hit the call button, and it still doesn't work. Double checking the front door is locked, and we start for the kitchen. I tell her we have to check the patio near the kitchen, and I grab a big knife that wasn't even close to being sharp from the kitchen. We check the patio door near the kitchen, and it's locked. We turn on all the lights and grab the phone and dial 911. The phone isn't a cordless phone. It's one of the old ones with a cord attached to a wall. My friend is on the phone with a dispatcher, telling her what happened, and I hear a whistle coming from outside the kitchen window. The thing people don't think about, because I didn't, in my thinking that safety was turning on the lights, is while you have the reflection of the inside on the window, people on the outside have a clear view of you, unless you press your face against the window. I hear the whistle again. It sounds like someone is trying to get someone's attention kind of whistle, but I don't see anything outside, and I'm not pressing my face to the window to see if I'm the person they're whistling for. My friend is still talking to the dispatcher and is crying and saying she doesn't have the address to the house. She hands me the phone and I say,
Hello?
The dispatcher lady, who sounds annoyed, tells me she needs an address to send the police to. I ask that she trace the call and she says something like,
Your house sitting and you don't even know where you're at?
Scared, angry, and overwhelmed, I hand the phone back to Amanda and start looking for something with an address in the kitchen. I'm looking for it in the junk drawer, on the counter, on the refrigerator, fully keeping an eye down the hall that has the daycare rooms, knowing that on the other side of one of those doors is a patio door that was opened. Amanda tells the lady that she doesn't pick up the mail because of their lockbox, and then a few seconds later removes the phone from her ear and stares at me with a blank face. I ask her if they're tracing the call, because I cannot find anything with an address. Amanda says low,
She said, I hope the police find you in time, and hung up the phone.
I was so scared and angry at the same time. We knew that there were people outside. We knew that the patio door to the daycare area was opened. We did not know what to do. We stood in the kitchen silent for what seemed like forever, but was probably 1 minute. I picked up the phone and dialed 411. I told Amanda that they would have the number to the police department. As calmly as I could, I explained what was happening to us. I included the 911 dispatcher and said we really needed the phone number of the town's police department when we heard a huge metal bang outside the kitchen window by the patio door. It sounded like someone dropped something metal and heavy. Amanda started crying, and I couldn't hold in my fear anymore and started crying too. Whoever was outside was going to break open that patio door is what I'm thinking. The 411 operator said they were connecting us and would stay on the line with us after getting pissed at the 911 dispatcher on our behalf. A police officer answered the phone, and the 411 operator started explaining what was happening to the police. Then they were asked to disconnect once we had an established connection. The police asked a few questions and we heard the whistle again outside, and the floodlights all around the house turned on again. I was too scared to look outside, and we had never turned on the patio light because we had to walk across the patio window to get to the light switch. We told the policeman on the phone about the whistle, and he said that there should be several policemen showing up shortly and to stay on the phone. We were outside the town limits and knew it might take a few minutes. Having an officer on the phone made me feel a little better, but I was still really scared. He told us that the police arrived and were coming up the drive. The policeman said to put down the phone and open the door, so I did. What I saw was a police pickup truck with spotlights flashing into the pastures that ran along both sides of the drive. 2 officers, not with handguns, but with shotguns, walking slowly beside the truck as it came up the long drive. 4 officers approached the house, asking us our names. One went to the phone and said they were here and hung up the phone. They ordered us to stay in the dining room and began searching the house. One by one, they returned. The last one came back in through the patio door by the kitchen. He said he searched the barn, and the horse scared him, and the horse also looked spooked. He asked what other animals were in the barn. They told us they didn't find anyone, and that the daycare patio was not locked. There was, however, a broom handle in the track to prevent it from being opened too far. I looked at the patio door, and the officer entered in and saw there was not a broom handle in that one, and then felt dumb because he just walked through it. They lectured Amanda about not knowing the address of the house she was supposed to be responsible for, and other stuff I don't remember. After finishing statements, they said they'd stick around and look more, and if we wanted to leave, we could. They could lock the bottom lock, but not activate the alarm, and we were cool with that. We were out of there so fast. We got into my car and went to her mom's. So mentally exhausted, we fell asleep and I went to my office job the next morning. She said she really didn't want to go back to the house, but she had to feed the animals their breakfast. Her mom told her to take her sisters, and she did. That afternoon, she called me at work. She was really nervous and began telling me that when they went into the house, there were footprints and poop on the carpet. I said it was probably the cop that checked the barn. She said that she didn't know or pay attention. Also, she said that when they went into the barn to feed and water the animals in the morning, someone had tied all the rabbits' legs together in their hutches. They had 10 rabbits the kids used for 4-H. Amanda then continues to say there was a note with the word "lucky" scribbled on the back of a pizza coupon she thought came from the refrigerator door because the flyer was missing a coupon. It took a while for them to untie the rabbit's legs, and Amanda asked her mom to find someone else from their church to finish the house sitting. She wasn't going back. She also told the officer what she came back to, but no one was ever caught, and the police never called either of us to update us. I, a 25-year-old female, had an experience about 4 days ago that I haven't been able to shake. I was dog and house sitting for my boyfriend, a 26-year-old male, while he was away on a backpacking trip. My boyfriend's home is in a semi-remote area, at the bottom of a hill, at the back of a few acres of property. He's right next to the highway, which is opposite to us, a small rural neighborhood. It's both very sketchy and very safe, meaning that the community is close, but people frequently keep to themselves, and there are lots of abandoned and dilapidated homes right next to very well-kept homes. A pretty typical countryside neighborhood, so I really didn't feel unsafe agreeing to watch my boyfriend's property and his dog, Hennessy. Hennessy is a 115-pound, jet black, American Bulldog, English Labrador mix. He's basically all muscle, and ever since my boyfriend and I began dating, he's become very protective of me and my own dog, Lottie. Lottie is a 57-pound poodle mix. I'm a dog groomer, so she's usually done up in pretty silly haircuts with bows and everything. All of this is to say that one of my dogs is very intimidating and the other is not. Because of his strength, however, I cannot walk Hennessy and Lottie at the same time on my own, and so I usually walk Lottie alone, then go back and get Hennessy to walk him alone. We do about 30 minutes of walking each, and I like to take Hennessy after Lottie at night because I feel safer with him as it gets later. This is important because this was the case about 4 nights ago. I was about 3/4 of the way through my walk with Lottie when I got this really weird feeling that I was being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I looked around to see that about 30 feet or so back, there was a tall man in a hoodie standing next to an older, rundown home. I instantly thought that the hoodie was weird. I live in Northern California, and it's early August. It doesn't get colder than 87 degrees in the evening, especially when the sun was still setting like it was at the time. I forced myself to brush it off as I tend to be fairly paranoid due to my years of reading Let's Not Meet stories. As I kept walking, the sun kept setting, and the streets began to slowly get darker. I would glance back from time to time and notice that the man was keeping pace with me, not breaking that 30-odd foot distance. If I turned a corner, so did he. If I sped up, so did he. Finally, we reached the highway and I crossed right before a car came speeding past, hoping that if the guy was following me, this would put some distance between him and myself, which it did. But that didn't stop him from continuing to follow me. I walked as fast as I could to the house, not wanting to turn around, but now being able to hear his footsteps on the gravel. At this point, Lottie had noticed him too and started to bark and growl. I forced her to keep moving and thankfully made it back inside the house, slamming and locking the door, hoping that was the end of it. It was not. Moments after I'd shut and locked the door, I felt someone trying to open it. The dogs heard this too and started barking because they always do when someone is at the door. There's no peephole on my door, but I can talk to whoever is on the other side. It's a pretty thin door. So I yelled out and asked who was there. Through the barking, I could hear a man's voice.
I love your dog. Can I meet her?
For some reason, the way he said it was so creepy. It was like there was nothing behind it, kind of like he'd rehearsed the line or decided to say it beforehand. I yelled back,
No. Please go away.
He paused for a second, and then again said,
I love your dog. Can I meet her?
He starts trying the door handle again, this time pushing up against the door. By this point, Hennessy can tell something is wrong, and so can Lottie. The hair on the back of Hennessy's neck is standing up, and he's mashing his teeth while growling. At that moment, I don't know what possessed me, but I threw Lottie into the bathroom behind me and grabbed Hennessy by the collar, keeping him close to the door with me. He's still barking and going crazy. I hear the man repeats that he wants to meet my dog, and I yelled out,
Leave!
He paused and then slammed into my door. I saw the door move, and at that moment, I unlocked the door and opened it just wide enough that Hennessy could get about halfway out. He's going bonkers at this point. My hand is starting to hurt from holding him back. I can hear his teeth clacking as he ferociously chomps toward the man. Well, this dude was not expecting Hennessy. He stumbled back, almost falling over, and cursed as he scrambled to stay off the ground. He didn't even look at me, and instead booked it up the hill as fast as he could and out of sight. I managed to pull Hennessy back in, and called the cops to tell them what had happened. I never got a good look at the guy, and they basically told me there wasn't anything I could really do, but they did take my statement and told me they'd contact me if anything ever came of it. I am so thankful for Hennessy. After all of that, I snuggled up with him and Lottie that night and cried because it had all hit me how terrifying that was. I literally went out the next day and bought him the biggest bone I could find from a pet store nearly an hour away because he'd earned it. I also got Lottie something too, LOL. I don't know why this creep didn't get the hint when I had 2 dogs barking inside, but my assumption is that he didn't really realize he was hearing 2 barks, or assumed that I had 2 dogs. They were both like puffy poodle, that is to say, he wasn't afraid. I'm so thankful the guy didn't have a firearm, and looking back now, I probably should have just called the cops and kept my door closed. But I hope then maybe because he saw Hennessy, he'll know not to come back and mess with us, because if he does, I'll let my big sweet boy rip his arm off. I'm still pretty jarred from this experience, but I figured it would be easier to share about it than keep dwelling on this. A couple days ago, someone broke into my house while I was asleep. I work the night shift, so sleeping during the day is something you learn to get used to. Around 6:30 p.m., I heard what I thought was a loud knocking sound coming from outside and my dogs going absolutely ballistic. For reference, I live on a farm out in the middle of nowhere. My closest neighbor is about a half mile away. But back to the story. I somewhat wake up, but don't really think anything of it since my neighbors like to shoot their guns and this was during hunting season. As I started falling back asleep, my heart started fluttering weird, like I knew something wasn't right. That's when I heard loud footsteps throughout the house. The dogs are still barking, but start to quiet down. That's when I really begin to worry. When I think my dogs would protect me in a time like this, fat chance. The footsteps stop on the other side of my bedroom door and don't move. I think this is how I'm going to die, and although I had a weapon in my room, I knew I couldn't get it without being heard. It felt like an eternity before the steps moved around and towards my brother's room. Rustling can be heard loudly through the house and things being thrown. I knew they were in my brother's room. Some of his friends are into seedy situations and I knew it had to be one of them. I heard footsteps coming back to my door and the doorknob handle moves. I immediately turn my back towards the door and close my eyes tight, a hand over my mouth to stop from screaming. The door opens, but that's it. Then he leaves as a car drives down the road. I finally bucked up my courage and get out of bed. Everything in the house except for my brother's room was undisturbed. I immediately called my brother and asked if any of his friends were coming over. He said not that he knew of, and I told him what happened. He got off the phone with me to start calling around. I went back to bed and noticed I still had my window cracked from earlier and realized I had my sheet off of me, wearing only a t-shirt to bed. If it was who I think it was, this wasn't a random event. One of my brother's friends has always had eyes for me, and the fact that he saw me sleeping in just a t-shirt makes me freak out. Whether or not he took something out of my brother's room or knew I was home alone sleeping before having to go to work later that night, I don't know. I'll post an update when I hear from my brother. You move out to the country to get away from the activity of city life and let your guard down. That's when something like this happens. Sometimes country life isn't so safe after all.